We start tonight with conservatism, with what the word conservative means in America now. The choice the conservative movement and the Republican Party has to make between being authoritarian conservatives or libertarian conservatives. Do American conservatives favor big, intrusive government, or do they favor small, leave-me-alone government? If you ask just about anybody who identifies as a conservative, nobody ever says they're on this side, right? Nobody calls themselves an authoritarian anything, let alone an authoritarian conservative. Nobody says, I'm for big, intrusive government. Vote for me. They always say that they are on this side, right? They're all on the libertarian side, according to them. No matter what kind of policies they actually like, they all say they are for smaller government, limited government, personal freedom. That is the conservative brand, right?
The commitment to limited government and individual liberty and freedom in this country.
Strong on conservative limited government.
Do I believe in a smaller limited government giving power back to the people? Yes.
The importance of limited government and with the blessing of self-government. That the pursuit of happiness depends on individual liberty. And individual liberty requires limited government. A renewed commitment to limited government, we need to reclaim our American system of limited government.
Their vision of a limited government is what has made America the greatest nation in the history of mankind.
Because of my upbringing, I believe in things like limited government.
Limited government.
We stand firm. We stand for limited government.
We cannot take for granted the case for limited government and individual freedom.
Pretty clear, right? Limited government, restrained government, humble government, tiny, tiny, tiny government. That is what they are selling. American conservatism, government that leaves you alone. That's the brand. The new Republican governor of Florida is a man named Rick Scott. Rick Scott just issued an executive order that will mandate forced drug testing of public sector workers in that state, at least quarterly. At least quarterly. When Governor Scott became governor, he transferred to his wife his controlling shares in a for-profit company that does drug testing. He says that has nothing to do with this executive order. He just likes the idea of the government forcing drug tests on people it can force drug tests on. There is a Fourth Amendment protection we have in this country against unreasonable searches and seizures, and that has generally banned blanket invasive drug testing like this. You're supposed to only be able to do it if, for example, there are grounds for suspicion, or in the case of very specific kinds of jobs. But Rick Scott, despite those legal restrictions on doing what he wants to do, he's going to go for it anyway. He's at least going to try. The state will pay the cost of defending his mandatory drug testing policy in court. The state, of course, will pay what is expected to be the spectacular costs of drug testing tens, if not hundreds of thousands of people quarterly, at least. And Florida already has a really bad budget deficit. But, you know, any cost is apparently worth it, because under Rick Scott, his state government wants mass, forcible drug tests, and so it shall have them. Is that small, leave-me-alone government, or is that big, intrusive government? In the great state of Michigan, the new Republican governor there is a man named Rick Snyder. Rick Snyder's signature legislation since he has been governor is to establish what's being called financial martial law, or fiscal martial law. His administration will decide if your town is in a financial emergency. If the Snyder administration so declares, if they declare a financial emergency in your town, a financial emergency czar will be appointed, not elected by you, but appointed, sent to your town, given the power to abolish your town. The town can be dissolved on the say-so of the governor's financial emergency person. Anyone you elected locally to represent you can be dismissed. All contracts, all unions, all rights of people who work for that town can be dissolved on one person's say-so. If Governor Rick Snyder gives the nod, he is taking that much power. Is that small, leave-me-alone government? Or is that big, intrusive government? In the interview tonight, we will be talking with the Secretary of State of the great state of Wisconsin, where there has been national attention to Wisconsin Republicans stripping people's rights and ability to join unions. Your freedom to associate in this country is guaranteed by the Constitution. Your freedom to join a union if you want to. But to the extent that the government can be used to limit that right of yours, Republicans in Wisconsin and in Ohio and in Indiana and in New Hampshire and in Florida and in Tennessee and in Oklahoma and in Nebraska, Republican governors and legislatures in all of these states, all over the country, are stretching the power of government to try to end that right of yours. A history professor at the University of Wisconsin published a long study guide online earlier this month looking at what might explain this policy push, not just in Wisconsin, but in all of these other states, all at once. The professor's name is William Cronin, and he is not only not a liberal activist, he's also really no schlub. He is president-elect of the American Historical Association. He is a MacArthur Genius Award winner. He is one of the most distinguished history professors in the United States of America. But after Professor Cronin wrote this academic piece online about conservative groups using model legislation to push certain policies in the states, the Republican Party of the state of Wisconsin filed an open records request demanding to read Professor Cronin's emails, taking a law designed to make government transparent to the public and instead using it to force into the public emails written by a university professor whose academic writings put him on the wrong side of the Republican Party on an issue they feel quite sensitive about. You speak out, the government will use all the leverage it can muster over you to pry open your life. Small, leave me alone government, or the other kind? We probably should have seen this thing coming. After the big Democratic wins in elections in 2006 and 2008, the pendulum swinging back toward the Republican Party ever since has really been a swing back to a specific kind of conservatism. A specific kind of conservatism that is all about government that is as big and intrusive as possible. One of the first statewide elections after the big Democratic win in 2008 was the Virginia governor's race, right? In November 2009, Virginians elected a man who had said that, quote, every level of government should statutorily and procedurally prefer married couples over cohabitators, homosexuals, or fornicators. Not only is that not leave me alone small government conservatism, that is big government crusade against the fornicators conservatism. And the administration of the man they elected, Governor Bob McDonnell of Virginia, has been sort of like that. As with that professor in Wisconsin having the Republican Party demand his emails in Virginia, it has been Governor McDonnell's Attorney General, Ken Cuccinelli, who has demanded to search the emails of a Virginia science professor, a professor whose research on climate issues that apparently did not meet with government approval. Can't you just smell the freedom, the liberty, the humble, restrained government leaving people free to go about their business? The latest incarnation of this breed of conservatism weirdly involves this show, or at least my last name. Evan McMorris Santoro at Talking Points Memo turned up a new demand by the conservative movement, a new demand by the right, to obtain the private emails of people to whom it is busy selling the idea that conservatives really just want to leave people alone. The labor studies faculty at the University of Michigan, at Wayne State University, and at Michigan State have all just had their emails demanded by a right-wing think tank, specifically demanding to see any email from any professor at the labor faculty at any of these schools, any email that includes the words Scott Walker, Wisconsin, Madison, or Maddow. It is possible they think that Maddow is just a common misspelling of Madison. But if that's not the case, they mean me, this show. The right-wing group that is demanding any emails that include references to me or this show is called the Mackinac Center. They are a conservative group. They are funded mostly by secret donations in that they do not disclose the names of individuals or corporations who give them money. But they are well-funded, and we do know through tax records about donations to them by the charitable foundations of a lot of billionaires and corporations, frankly. Mother Jones did a nice piece explaining who these guys are, what we know about their funding from foundations like the one run by Charles Koch of Koch brothers fame, also the Walton Family Foundation, that's the Walton family that runs Walmart, also the Edgar and Elsa Prince Foundation. Edgar and Elsa Prince, I believe, are the mom and dad of Eric Prince, who you remember from Blackwater fame. All of those foundations fund the Mackinac Center. The Mackinac Center wrote what looks to be the basis of that financial martial law policy in Michigan Republican Governor Rick Snyder. This show was the first national news outlet to report in detail on that policy. And now the Mackinac Center is demanding the emails of anybody who could be an expert on that subject in Michigan who might have the temerity to type the word Maddow in any context in an email. How's that leave me alone personal liberty thing working out for you? Americans like this idea. Americans like the idea of small c, small government, leave me alone conservatism. This is good political branding. This is a good sales pitch for any politician. The conservative movement and the Republican Party have done very well for themselves selling this idea, small leave me alone government, selling this idea to America. But now the country is figuring out that even though this is what they bought, this is not what they got when they took it home and unwrapped it. Wisconsin Republican Governor Scott Walker won in November by 6 points. The latest polls say if the election were held today, he would lose to that same Democrat by 7 points. Ohio Republican Governor John Kasich won in November by 2 points. Today, he would lose to that same Democrat by 15 points. Florida Republican Governor Rick Scott won in November by 1 point. Today, he would lose to that same Democrat by 19 points. Michigan Republican Governor Rick Snyder won in November by a whopping 18 points. Today, he has swung 20 points in the other direction, and he would lose by 2. Yeah, but you say, the big intrusive government Republicans, they aren't up for re-election right now. Democrats can't capitalize on the Republican big government overreach, can they? Turns out they can, and it's in progress. That's next.